Over the last few months, we dealt with a pandemic that has swept the world, and in Australia it was a very mild experience, lucky for us, but it still meant a whole bunch of different things that needed to come into place to change the way we live, to sort of stem the flow of it here and keep us as safe as possible.
When the virus was revealed, and then I suppose it got out of hand, let's just say, it escaped. When it hit the Italians, we really knew. We knew we were in trouble.
I guess there was uncertainty about how exactly it was spreading. We started off where there was a lot of tracking and you could see where people were getting it, and then we were getting cases in the community that we didn't know where they were coming from, so we had to treat everyone as if they had the virus and keep 1.5 metres apart from people.
During this whole pandemic, we've had to change everything about the way we do everything, from having to stop shaking hands. You know, we've had to act as if we and they are diseased pariahs. So the constant keeping the physical distance, the constant hand sanitizing, the suspicion of hard surfaces and door handles and anything that anyone else might have touched. Backing away from someone if they get a bit too close. It's counterintuitive, it all feels incredibly wrong, but you had to normalise being the opposite of what you would normally be.
Yeah, it was intense at first, for sure, because going out for the I think that was like the scariest thing actually. Like a lot of the time was just like going outside, you felt like you were in like a fucking horror movie. It was like dun dun, and like everything was eerie and you were just like, oh my God, what is going on? And like, don't touch your face, don't touch your face. That's all I'd say to myself every time I went outside. And then you get home, you're like, okay, I did it. Wash my hands, okay, we're good. Yeah.
I feel like what's just happened is that we've exchanged one mask for the other. So we went through the bushfires, and that was, you know, extremely challenging spiritually and, you know, as far as global warming goes and all of that. And then we just switched one mask for the other mask, which was around COVID and you know, spraying people with germs or being sprayed with, you know, something that can kill you. So, and that's rearranged the brain, I reckon, and the way to think through how to go into the future.
It wasn't the apocalypse I was expecting, but it was an apocalypse nonetheless.
We actually bugged out of the city for about 7 weeks, and we closed this place down because it was very important to us that Tortuga remain safe. You were working for a bit in the workshop, but not for long.
I kept my small crew on for as long as I could, and then it got to the stage where I couldn't send someone out to go and pick up hardware or go and pick up materials. Didn't know where this virus was coming from, who was carrying, how it was carried. We were just learning about it, and that's when I made the decision to close down. I said, right, we can't go on with this.
When the shutdown started, I think there was we didn't know how extreme they were going to be and that the pony would have to shut, so there was an initial like, sanitize everything, have social distancing, and that only went for a week, and we were all kind of like, oh shit, like we're not making any money. And then they were just like, everything needs to shut.
Well, I think everyone lost their work. It was, nobody really knew or had any direction to where they were going.
So it was like, oh my God, my job is gone, and I think I have no money, and I have to stay inside all day, every day.
One thing that happened was Deb, who runs the space, she started a Facebook streamed event where people can log on and watch live music and performances, and I was making some animations for that. And so everyone had to be really quick in just adapting to that new environment, and how can we work together to keep creating and making stuff and actually being artists when they're isn't any support and there isn't any foundation right now, or jobs or anything, but we still need to do what we do.
I was really actually surprised by the fun social aspect of like Zoom parties and online based like board games and like things like that. And you know, I'm sure that would probably, the novelty would wear off after you do it for a year or something.
People keep overusing words like unprecedented, but you can kind of see why. It has been unprecedented. I never thought I would be dealing with something like this.
We had a health crisis that, as I keep explaining to my kids, this is not something we'd ever seen before. They keep seeming to think that we are used to this, but obviously what just happened is something totally different to what any of us have ever lived through before.
We're living through a time which I guess most of my ancestors probably couldn't say they went through, but yeah, some of them, not all.
It's hit us at a time when our communications are fractured and splintered through social media. We can't get clear information. There are polarisation politically. I know I'm talking about a virus, but I think it's actually revealing the social virus that's part of how the world is working at the moment. It's quite disconnected. I don't know if we're that healthy at the moment in many ways.
Yeah, I'm in a band, Hey Neighbour, and we did a live stream here the other night. It is a bit weird playing in the Pony because part of the context of this space is that there are a lot of people and it's known as quite an intimate bar. So trying to recreate that in a performance with just like a webcam and Elmo and Mikey off screen, the sound people, is quite hard, but it can also be quite fun because like one thing is that there's nobody here, so we can all really hear each other, and so it actually allows you to like play more intimately, and then also you kind of have to engage with the streaming comments that are coming through and make jokes about that. So I think it forces you to perform differently, but you probably still can get some kind of intimacy in the performance, but it's definitely not the same as performing to a whole room of people.
And that's why I'm here, to make sure you're not alone.
I noticed it on the roads as the traffic diminished and diminished and diminished, and I noticed it because I'm under a flight path as the planes diminished and diminished and diminished. And then what became extraordinary was the silence of the streets. And you'd go into town, I went once, I had to go for something, and just the emptiness of the streets. And as everything moved home and everything changed really quickly, so that we had to do all our work online and to quickly adapt to things that we thought were impossible. That's what I noticed, was the sheer speed of the change, of the shutdown, and yet the reopening of this online world and our ability to sort of transact in this new space almost immediately.
As soon as we realised that we were going to be closing on like the Monday, after we stopped freaking out, we realised, okay, we need to suddenly become an online arts centre. And so within 48 hours of closing our doors, we had put up our first digital piece. And while we were doing that, we built a production studio in our theatre because we knew we weren't going to be able to use it as a theatre for a while. So we literally turned it into like an old-fashioned TV production studio so that we could churn material and try to cover the range of stuff that we would normally provide to people. So the things we've had to do and the things we've chosen to do have stretched all of us, myself included. I mean, as soon as we finish this interview, I'm going to be stepping back into that theatre and reading a Dr. Seuss book. I believe today will be The Cat in the Hat. The sun did not shine, it was too wet to play. So he sat in the house, put them away, and he said, "That is that," and then he was gone with a tip of his hat.
The COVID experience for us at Woolmarley, I guess, we knew that we couldn't have people in the gallery. So we decided to try and fast forward something that we've been thinking about for a while, and that's having that online virtual space for our artists, because they were at home making lots of work because they've been stuck inside. And yeah, so this was for our Not Young and Free exhibition, which is our response to the Endeavour's arrival. And I guess in a way it's been quite uplifting because their works have been selling and they've had extra exposure which they've never thought was possible. So I guess it's creating our own little way of making sure we continue to be self-determined and getting them out there and other people actually seeing that there's this amazing art.
At the height of the lockdown, it was profound, I think. I felt like we're all in a meditative state, and I felt like when we went out into the street and you'd be walking, people you never knew were just saying hello. This sense of trying to maintain space, but in a funny way, because I connected, knowing we're coming together, the space brought us together in a way that we hadn't really experienced before. Normally everyone's kind of on the move. Really noticed it heading down to my local park, Petersham Park. There were sort of peak times there. The morning, 6 a.m. was like madness. Then I think everyone went home to work. And then in the evening, it was just so busy, clusters of all sorts. And everyone's trying to keep their distance, but I don't know, it was sort of not working, I think. My 15-year-old would come home and he was just outraged. He just said, what are they thinking? There's too many people in Petersham Park. Going, they're not keeping distance. I think there's more than 4 people, or that's not a family cluster. But somehow in the park, I think people felt that they could almost get away with it. We were sort of in it together. There's this sense of camaraderie, we're all in this together, and it's a really healthy space. And I know we'll probably miss it. I already miss it. I already missed the peak of COVID, and I missed the peak of lockdown and that moment where everything paused and we all got together and the streets were quiet. We're not saying hello as much anymore. I feel like it's almost passing a little bit.
So one of the fantastic things Centennial Park did is they closed the park to cars on weekends. And so the streets were full of people on bikes, on scooters, on rollerblades, I saw people skiing but with wheels underneath their skis, all sorts of things, using the space in ways that you can't do when cars are there. I guess it was early enough, it wasn't so cold, it was just beautiful, and so many people getting excited thinking, although this is a compromise and this is trying to deal with a global health crisis, the coronavirus, it also got people very excited thinking about why are streets the way they are, and this is fantastic, and why don't we have this all of the time?
It's been a struggle, but yeah, we've also learnt a lot during this experience. Like, we've got to do a lot of stuff that you wouldn't particularly get to do if you were doing day-to-day life before COVID, I guess. And we've got a cataloguing system now starting to get in, so we've got understanding around proper preservation and restoration around artworks. There's been works done to the gallery to make it ready, so there's been little improvements, even though we have been still trying to figure out how we're going to continue to keep going with this. It's pushed us ahead too in a weird way, yeah.
A lot of my role is about caring for the property and the collections within it. And I saw the opportunity, once the houses closed, to buckle down and clean everything. And I mean everything. So I started a process of working from room to room throughout Elizabeth Bay House and Vaucluse House, and cleaning absolutely everything in each of those spaces. It meant that the houses were still getting the life that they needed, opening the shutters, letting light, letting air in, and giving them love. And that's what I focused on for the last 3 months. And I knew that the result at the end of that would be an even more wonderful experience, I think, for people coming back to these houses, for people to get out of their own homes to come to a house museum and see all of the stories that they can tell. For me, it was actually quite a productive period, and that I knew the outcome would be a really positive experience once we could open the doors to visitors again.
So, Sydney Chamber Opera, which is a resident company at Carriageworks, we were just about to premiere the world premiere of 4 new operas that we've been working on for over 2 years, and made the decision to create a film rather than a live performance. This particular production was heavy on the use of AV. There was a large screen that spanned the 20 metres of the theatre that we were using, which would have been extraordinary in the theatre for a live audience. It's a bit strange shooting a screen on camera, but we had to adapt, as with many things. In one of the works, there's a carpet of fog on the ground, which at some points obscures the performers. We would never get away with doing that much fog in a live performance. The whole audience would have been breathing it in, but no, that wasn't a concern. It could fill the whole venue and it didn't matter. And making a film of it has forced us to, in a positive way, reevaluate what it means for people to experience this kind of work. It became an experience that's much more digestible and palatable for people watching without the magic and frisson of live performance. And there's no way I'm saying that making films of performance replaces what it means for live performance. I think one thing that a lot of colleagues and audiences and people who just love going to live performance is this time has made them realise how irreplaceable that experience is.
I have to say that I've given up a little bit of safety. I'm not singing on anybody, but I'm pretty sure I've been sung on to quite a few times in the last kind of couple of weeks now that choirs can get together. I say I don't want COVID, I don't want to go through that, but in the moment of singing that song, I don't care. It's so beautiful hearing the chord, and it's so fantastic having these good folk surrounding me singing something that I've arranged for them.
So I don't know whether I'm optimistic about it getting better or getting worse, because I don't really know, and I don't think many people really know which way it's going to go. I try not to dwell on that. I think I'm just working on myself emotionally and in terms of my own stability after having such a crazy few months.
But a small part of me is a bit concerned that it might come back. We might not be over the worst, even in a year's time, and we might just have to accept that this is something that we have to live with from now on.
I'm really happy I'm healthy, and I'm really happy Australia is generally healthy, doing really well. But it's frightening out there about the future. It's like a real marker, bang, and it feels like something has just ended and we're in the middle of something and we haven't quite got to the new place yet and we don't know what it is.
I think it also, in a more nebulous way, it's turned us all back to what is the meaning of life? Those like the really big questions, like what are we doing here? And this sort of, I think, put that in the spotlight, because we have an opportunity now to redesign a little bit and go, well, actually, if we're going to hit the pause button on everything, how do we actually want to create life? How do we want to organise ourselves? You know, we've come up with this phrase, essential workers, and I think it's also started to make us think about essential work. What's essential? What's not essential? I think that there might be some revolutions like that, and I think that's a really good thing, because it's given us all time to think about what's going on and about the mess that we've made of everything. And even the more recent stuff with the Black Lives Matter and this kind of civil unrest that's happening, I think that was an absolutely inevitable flow on from this time as well, because people have been forced to stop and think about how we're doing things. And it's not great, and your light's flashing.